Have you ever wondered why you find it easy to learn some things and not others? Or why you can remember something trivial from your past, but not something you need for an exam right now? Learning is indeed a very complex thing, and it is influenced by many factors. But one thing is for sure, by knowing and understanding the processes of learning, you give yourself much more chance of succeeding in your studies. In this series of videos, we're going to discuss 3 key ideas that will make a large difference to your success as a student. Let's start with a really important concept that seriously affects learning potential: cognitive load. Brain scientists talk about 2 metaphorical areas of the brain, the working memory and long-term memory, both of which have very different capacities. They are metaphorical because they aren't actually physical areas in the brain, but they help explain the way we process or encode information and then how we recall or retrieve it again. The 2 need each other, but they have very different characteristics. The working memory processes new information, but it is limited in how much it can do that. The reason is quite smart. If it could process everything around us, we would be overwhelmed by the amount of content and stimuli. Because your working memory is limited, this is why it's so important to apply your attention to the content you want to learn and to block out distractions. When we think about an idea or information in our working memory that we decide is useful to us, it begins the process of transferring it into the long-term memory. We can do this almost to infinity, as the long-term memory appears to be limitless. And it is where your memories of things that you have paid attention to throughout your life are now stored, whether you can recall them now or not. But it's not just a one-way street. The long-term memory plays a large role in supporting the working memory. Whenever we encounter something new, the working memory searches the long-term memory to see if it can connect to anything in there to help process or make sense of what it is now experiencing. If the search is successful and a connection is made, it eases the pressure off the working memory. If it can't, the working memory begins to feel overworked and stressed. And if there are more than 4 competing stimuli at one time, it metaphorically freezes. That's when learning becomes impossible. You'll be able to recognize this in so many of your own experiences. Consider anything that you have tried to learn from the beginning: reading, riding a bike, playing an instrument, learning maths. Everything to do with these things at the start was slow. Improvement took a long time. But eventually, your knowledge of all the small steps it takes to get good at something were learnt and moved into the long-term memory. Each step now automatically supports the working memory, so it can focus on the next harder skill. The implication for this in terms of learning is enormous. The more knowledge you have in the long-term memory about a topic, then the more it helps reduce the pressure on the working memory when new related content is introduced. So, this is why your lecturer or tutor is insistent on you participating in all the activities presented. Each time you do, you are adding to and building your knowledge, which, as we have seen, helps you to acquire even more knowledge. When we learn something, the knowledge moves into the long-term memory. However, how easily we can bring that knowledge back into the working memory to support new learning depends on how many times we have tried to do so and how much time has passed between the original learning and when it is needed again. If you don't retrieve it, the memory fades. You need to recall or retrieve information you've learnt several times for it to become easily accessed in future learning. You can accelerate the solidification of memories or ensure they don't fade if you keep bringing them back into your working memory. By actively engaging in retrieval practice, by testing yourself on trying to remember what you've learned, you strengthen the neural pathways the memories travel along, which helps make memories stick. Anytime you have to think about a piece of knowledge and actively reproduce it, you are engaged in retrieval practice. So, when you are asked a verbal question, when you are quizzed, when you are asked to be in a discussion, when you are asked to participate in a group, and when you are asked to do an assessment, all of these are opportunities to strengthen your memory of content. There is a large amount of research that tells us that doing this testing is far superior than simply rereading your notes. When you reread your notes, you're not challenging the brain to strengthen the memory. The brain isn't really doing much at all when it just rereads. This is why your lecturer or tutor will ask you lots of questions and ask you to reproduce your knowledge in some form many times. Each time you do, you are strengthening your memory of the topic. Of course, you don't need your tutor to ask you these questions. You can ask them to yourself and do your own retrieval practice to help strengthen your memory and understanding of all of the topics you study. Here are some ways that you can do this.